Hello, this is Forward's takeover to the Baxter Story FYI podcast. In honor of Black History Month and this year's theme, Reclaiming Narratives, we shine a brighter light on our stories, experiences, and history. We are discussing some important topics with some invaluable insights and stories. We have an amazing panel of guests sharing their journeys and experiences of reclaiming narratives as professionals in business. If you would like to join Forward, our first cross-brand ERG, or would like more information, please find the one-pager and sign-up link on the company SharePoint and learning platforms. Enjoy. Welcome to this year's 2024 Black History Month event, which is about reclaiming narratives. So before we start with the questions, maybe our panelists would like to introduce themselves. Eljay, you're closest to me, so should we start with you? Just a brief intro.
Right. So everybody, good morning to you. My name is Ebenezer Berryman, but everybody calls me Eljay. I work in the tech industry, in security in the tech industry, and my job is entitled a Global Program Lead. And basically all I do is lead a team of individuals who do a lot in the learning and development field. And I've worked in the learning and development field for a very, very long time. And I'll stop there.
Thank you. Ebenezer.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ebenezer. I run a business called Kalimanchi. It's all about fusing African food with other cultures and being that bridge for African flavors, basically. But yeah, we do a lot of festivals, corporate catering, pop-ups and residencies.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and to meet so many new faces. My name is Carol Thomas. I'm the University Accommodation Services Manager, and we have a partnership with Baxter Story. And I'm looking to see if I can see any colleagues from University of the Arts London. There he is. And also, I've got other hats as well. I'm also here as the chair for Living in Black Commission, which was a commission which was put forward to raise the awareness of the experience of young Black students living in halls or residences and also studying at universities. And also the other aspect of my role is that I'm also an EDI lead for Cubo, which is a professional body which looks to enhance the experiences for students also on campus. And that ranges from accommodation, that ranges from catering, that ranges all the way through everything that students need to actually have a good time while they're at university. Thank you.
Thank you.
Morning. For me, having lived through pre and post-apartheid South Africa, now living in the UK, Forward is very close to my heart. My journey through Baxter Story in the last 7 years has been interesting. So today I'm really excited to share my insights through what I've learned and what I've overcome through the course and changing our narrative, returning our narrative.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Natasha Draper-West, an operations manager for Portico. I've been with Portico. I always try to calculate it and get it wrong, but I think it's been 18 years, right? Yeah, 18 years. I'm originally from Trinidad and Tobago, and obviously this initiative is quite dear to me, and I'm really honored to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. So shall we get started? Nervous? You're in good hands. And we'll start as we did. So Eljay, our first question for you. Can you share your experiences of rising to leadership positions and how your ethnic background has shaped your journey?
Okay, interesting question. So I am from the Bahamas. I'm the little poor boy who walked barefoot in the village, went to the water pump, came from a home where we didn't have running water in the home or anything like that. And I find myself here in London sitting in a panel talk. So my story, I always say my story is a bit of a good luck story, but my rise to leadership as such has been one of people giving me opportunities, but me also recognizing my own skill set to get there. I've worked in a number of industries as well. So I started off in travel and tourism, working for airlines, moved into aviation proper, and then moved from aviation back into the fashion industry. Ebenezer and I were talking about what I've done. I worked for Nike years ago. That was an opportunity I got from just applying for a temporary role. I moved to Holland with £250 in my pocket and a box of clothes. That's what I did. And 4 years later, I was coordinating the clothing business for the kids business for Nike within the EMEA region. And that all came through hard work. All right. So nothing was an opportunity. The opportunity was getting in, but the hard work was proving who I was. Do you want me to continue, or are you happy with that?
Why? Oh,
We didn't have enough.
So joking aside, so I worked for Nike, then moved on to British Airways, and I worked my way up through British Airways as well. Did a lot of learning and development in British Airways whilst working as cabin crew. And I worked on a number of big projects for them, introducing new aircraft in like the A380, the double-decker plane. Went to France, learned all about it, then went and wrote all the training for the pilots and all the cabin crew. And then did the same thing for the latest aircraft in the fleet. And then I left. And then I moved to London City Airport, working in a management role there in compliance. And now I am working for a company called Milestone, but I'm based solely at Meta in the role of a global program lead. And that is developing team members that I've met along the way and mentoring them to be good leaders for themselves, but also becoming a good leader for the team that I manage. And I'll stop there.
You're next. What inspired you to pursue a career as a chef, and how do you think your cultural background shaped that decision?
My career as a chef probably started off with just cooking. Growing up, I'm the eldest sibling of 5, so I had to take on the task of learning how to cook from my grandparents and my mum, and then show my siblings how to cook. So I've always been cooking from when I was like 7 or 8 years old. But after I left college, didn't want to go to university because I wasn't too sure what to do. And I thought, let me just study professional catering, just so that if I ended up anywhere in the world, I'll have a job doing something in the kitchen. So I took that role on, and through mentorship or meeting people and just observing how the world works, what started me fueling me was just realizing the gap in the market where African and Caribbean food wasn't represented well enough. Just going to different restaurants, whether it was customer service, reviews, presentation to taste. I knew that there was something that needed to be done, and taking inspiration from how other cultures have been able to integrate and be able to serve their cultural foods to other culture, to the Western culture. I saw a big gap in the market basically, and that's what got me into catering or being a chef. Worked for different restaurants and different cuisine types, and I loved the way the skills and the way the operations was done. From like one of the ones that comes to mind is working for Bao London, and the attention to details of how simple the food was, how tasty it was, etc. is what kind of like I was kind of learning along the way. So work for different restaurants, work for street food vendors, and corporate catering businesses as well. And then from there, I kind of worked my way up from a chef to a sous chef to a head chef. And yeah, that's what then gave me enough fuel to start my own business, Kalimanchi. But in terms of what inspired me to be a chef, it was just more seeing the gap in the market, really.
Carol, we're going to come on to you. I've actually got some stats in this question. We did our research. From research, between 2006 and 2020, Black pupils had the biggest higher education entry rate increase of all ethnic groups. It was up 21% to 47.5%. Why do you think this was? What factors do you think attributed to this rise?
People are smart. I think that's a really, really good question. And I think that is a really good question that helps to change the narrative. Let's put it out there. Students are going to university. Students are being educated. And a big segment of that is Black students. And they want to progress. And I think it's a really, really important that we need to acknowledge, because what that also means is that they're going to have more money in their pocket. And when they've got more money in their pocket, they want to spend it. So we need to wake up, shape up, and acknowledge that, because they're going to want to spend their money. And one of the things that I know that I do, I'm really conscious as to what I do with my money. So I'm interested to know which festivals you go to, because I'm going to seek you out and I'm going to buy my food from you. That's what I do. My money is precious. I work hard for it. And I think it's a really important stat. So thank you for that. In terms of what that actually means also, students are customers. They're paying to study at universities. When they go to university, they have expectations of a good service. And if your establishment is not given a good service, they'll go somewhere else. So I think it's really important around that. And I think in terms of the fact that they're paying customers is recognizing that as well. I think it also means that when students come, they want to have a good experience. If they come on site, to campuses, if they're not getting what they want, they'll go somewhere else. They'll go to another outlet off site, off campus. So it's thinking about that as well. And also the experience of students when they go to universities, when they go to college open days, they're also looking, what have they got to offer me as a Black student? What's going on? So I remember myself, but just a few years ago when I was going to university, I went to different college open days. And after deciding what course I wanted to study, I then started to look what it was like, how I can imagine myself being at university, moving from Bristol, coming to London for the first time. And I wanted to belong. So I chose a university which had Black people. That's the reality. It might be completely different for students coming up. And I'd be really interested to hear from some of the young people here what their decision making was when they actually chose to go to university. But for me, because there weren't that many students who were going to university from Bristol, I wanted to be somewhere where I felt welcomed and I would feel comfortable. And then the other aspect of that is when they're living in halls of residences, what does that actually look like? You know, people are leaving their homes, going to university, being in a situation where they might be the only person who's Black, who might have a different religion, and what does that feel like for them as well? So the things with regards to living in Black at university, which I'll talk about later, if you don't mind, those are some of the things that we have touched on. We have to see Black students, Black people as not one-dimensional. We have lots of different factors about us. Look at us all here. We all look different. We're all wearing different clothes. We all got different hairstyles. We're not just one type. And I think it's really important when you think about your customers, it's not one size fits all. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Carol. I just want to touch upon, because I know the question was about what factors attributed to it. Do you think it is that students are seeing other students that look like them at universities? And then I guess a point of it is also, and I think Eljay touched upon it, when you said that you've got to where you are because of hard work, because I feel like that's also something that's quite common amongst Black families. It's that drive. We've all been told by our parents that you have to work twice as hard. So do you think it's a mixture of maybe both, seeing other people like us in positions and thinking, well, I can do that. I can go to university. There's people that look like me that are there. But then there's always that, if you want to do well, actually, you're going to have to work twice as hard anyway. So
exactly. I think there is definitely both. I think that we are driven and we want to show that we want to do well. When I think about my parents who made the trip from Jamaica to come here, I am eternally grateful that they gave me the opportunity. So I want to make the most of it. Some people might say, oh, why would you even bother? But I know that my parents made big sacrifices for me. And I know that a lot of other people sitting here can actually resonate with that. There's also the thing about we want to do well. And there's this also thing about seeing role models as well, representations. And I hope that this Black panel might inspire some other people, not just Black students or Black people to go into business, but inspire everyone in here to actually think differently.
Fawn, you mentioned how long you've been with Baxter Story and working as the chef, but what's a change you would like to see in the hospitality industry? And can you share specific ways that you have advocated for change and successes and challenges? What's the change you would like to see in the industry?
From a chef perspective, I find it really difficult from coming from an ethnic minority or Indian or Black background, because the growth is very difficult. You have to fight twice as hard to get to where you need to be. People that work with me always ask me, why am I working so hard? It's because I have twice as hard just so I can prove what I can do. There's one stamp I'll put out there. In Baxter Story, I'm the only senior chef of color. And that just hit with you. So clearly there must be something off. I don't know, maybe is that upskilling we're not doing in our business? Do we need to dig deeper? Are we making our business more exciting to come to? So from me, I'll use my social media, what I do, to show the world out there that actually there is time to grow. And there's some amazing chefs of color in our business. They just stay at the level and then that's it. the head chef. They don't grow any further. Over time, I've tried to get that, but I'm sure with Forward right now, I think we're going to get there. I'm positive. And we started all of this 2 years ago in diving. And then when Lindsay came on, I was a bit skeptical. Like I think for most of you are skeptical to find what's actually going on there. Is this just a tick box exercise? It isn't. I can guarantee it isn't a tick box exercise. Forward is moving forward. And there's some changes just coming. From my perspective as a chef and the only chef in Forward, it's exciting. So it'll be a journey.
Thank you. Natasha, what unique challenges have you faced and what personal strengths helped you overcome them?
Okay. I guess my challenges aren't really unique because I'm pretty sure a lot of people could relate. So as I said, I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, and I left Trinidad when I was 20. I won't tell you how old I am now. And so left Trinidad on my own to go to Bermuda to work in the hotel industry. I was in Bermuda for 2 years. So yeah, it was just sort of, I think, coming from a Black family, obviously a Caribbean family. The family is very important. And it's just been having to face life's challenges without having key people in person around you, which I struggled with a little bit. There were a few families out in Bermuda who adopted me. So I had, stepmommy and stepdaddy sort of stepping in every now and again. And then obviously I came to this country he was my husband then, he was my boyfriend. So we came to explore and to look and, obviously we had each other. But again, having that network around you was very challenging. What helped me overcome it, obviously, is, well, not obviously, but what helped me overcome it was my faith. Just always having God to fall back on and always having a higher being that I know was looking out for me. I was on a training course the other day run by our lovely Dr. Bevans, and we were asked to look at a clip. It was, sort of talking about beliefs and dreams and that sort of thing. And one of the things that resonated then with me was that it spoke a lot about faith. And I think that's the one thing that most Black people growing up, they have that background of faith. Not everybody, but I would say the majority. And I think it's always important to keep God present and to have something to fall back on in hard times or challenging times as this.
Thank you, Natasha. We've touched a little bit on family. You all have in various different ways. So my question to you, Eljay, is how has your experience as a Black person working in the UK differed to that of your parents?
6 kids, so we're close in family size. We've 6 kids all the way from a fun family grouping to where she had no one. Absolutely no one, no support except from that of my stepdad. In terms of opportunity, I think that is the word that we speak about. Carol, you mentioned that word in the conversation. As a young man growing up in the UK, I've been afforded a lot of opportunities. That's why my parents decided to come here. And they promised us it would be 2 years, and now it's 40-something years later. Yeah. And they were like, oh, we'll just wait till you finish. Do 2 years. We'll wait till you finish school. We'll wait till you go to university. Well, I didn't do university. I refused. I was fighting with my parents. But the one thing I said to them was, no matter what I achieve in my life, I will always strive to achieve more than the people that I know at school who went to university. That was my argument with my dad at the time. Speaking with my mum, she's very much of the mindset that for her and her career and what she's chosen to do, fear has been a big factor in the background for change. And so she's taken the opportunity to stick with what she knows in healthcare and not deviate from that. Whereas for myself, my brothers and my sisters, we've been a bit more brave, and our pathway has been, if it's not working for you, change. And I think that opportunity is what we all have nowadays if we really want to address it. If something isn't working for you, change it. You be the change because nobody else is going to do it for you.
Ebenezer, how would you implement cultural food to a more refined restaurant or food establishment? And how difficult or easy have you found that?
And my thing was, I tell my staff members and the chefs that work with me, peanut butter and jam started from somewhere. Someone invented it. Sunday roast, somebody invented it. So if you're going to create anything or you're going to work with anything, try to be the change, try to be the next, invent the next thing that people crave, that someone will chill at home and say, oh, I'm craving a nice Indian, or craving a Chinese special fried rice. And when I started the business, one of the things that I'm quite proud of that we've kept consistent in terms of quality wise and being able to feed a lot of people with it is jollof rice and peas. It's think about the logistics of it, it's quite simple, but the idea is when you're eating a meal, it can stir up conversations, it can spark ideas or even question it to where did this come from, and represents multiple cultures at the same time. But if going forward and what I always do in terms of implementing that diversity and culture into food is like, I don't think you need to change the world completely, but just add a few tweaks and I think it's just more thinking about that's what's kind of sparked me to kind of reach out to certain companies about doing collaborations and fusions. I remember when we did our first collab residency in a pub, and I was thinking what regular pub goer is going to deal with African food. And it was challenging in the first week, but afterwards we did the same Sunday roast, but with a different type of chicken. We did something that people usually eat like nibbles, something that we do regularly now. We have nachos, but we do something called planchos, which is having plantain crisps with the same guacamole salsa and cheese sauce and stuff. So it's things like, because before, a lot of people that I would speak to would be like, oh, nobody wants to try African food and blah, blah, etc. I think sometimes it's more than just the food taste, but it's how people eat and just thinking more about how it will be received. But yeah, so that's the little bits in terms of when I'm creating a meal or doing a residency and doing the collaborations, where I think of how people would be able to ask a bit more questions or even think more about what they just use. I get frustrated when some people are just so basic. People just eat chips and ketchup, but I don't. One of my students is like,
Chips and ketchup.
on some days, but yeah, that's how I do.
Thank you. Basically, what I've taken from that is you keep the dishes the same, but you just add spice. Start small. There you go. Carol, one of your roles as commissioned chair for the Living Black at University, where you provide the right home environment for students to enable them to achieve their goals. What are some learnings from that work you feel could be applied to help businesses create more inclusive workplaces for Black and minority ethnic colleagues? So what are some takeaways that we could take?
Okay, Living Black at University, I've just come back from the conference which took place last week. And this is the program in terms of what was actually available for staff across the sector. It was really interesting because at this conference, we found that it was very inclusive in terms of the delegates. And if you want to know more about Living Black at University, you could just do a search and you can see the actual survey, which also contains the recommendations. And also there's a checklist if you want to conduct a survey in terms of surveying your customers. There's some really good, interesting questions in there. And also you can reach out to me as well. But in terms of Living Black at University, it's a really important piece of work that was conducted by Unite Students, which is a private sector student accommodation provider. And we have a partnership with them, and a lot of universities across the UK has partnerships with them. And it's quite interesting that it took a private provider to actually higher education institution, and it's actually starting to resonate. So I do feel that partnerships are really, really important. In terms of some of the findings, it's not nice reading in terms of realizing that students are not having a brilliant time at university. Some are in the main, yes, but deep down, there's some things that came out. And one of the things that came out for students was that they didn't have that sense of belonging. They felt as if they were there, but they're kind of like seen as the others. And that was something that really resonated with me many, many years ago, which is why I chose the university I went to, that is still a thing a few, years later. So that's one of the key things that came out from that survey. And that was almost like the driver in terms of enabled them to actually put together the recommendations. So some of the things that they said what we need to do, which I would also recommend your sector, is to listen to your customers, listen to your the people who are actually you're interacting with, So I know that we know that the customer is king, and I do think that we do have to kind of like listen to them and hear what they have to say. So that's one thing that's really important. So it's not just listening to your customer, but it's also applying action. So it's one thing to do a survey, you got all that information, but what do you actually do with it? What does it actually mean? It's really good to dig deep into your survey and the results and then create actions from that. Also put to your customers. So we realized that we needed to put our students at the front and in the center. And that's a terminology that you're hearing quite a lot about, which is across different sectors. So it's putting your customers at the front and in the center, hearing what they have to say and listening to them. The other thing that we found was policies and processes. We felt that we needed to have policies and processes up front, ready, available, so that students could actually understand what they're actually going to be getting into, as it were, so that they understand that they can, if there's an issue, if they wanted to know something more clearer, they can just find that on the website and understand the processes. And also training. There's also training that we need to have a look at. What can you actually do to actually enlighten, or if you like, race relations training? Not sure if racial relations is actually the right word, but race training. That is really important. And also being a host. Now, if you're going to do all this research, do all this survey, you're going to attract more people to your company, what is it like as a Black person coming to your company? How does that feel to be a Black person? I've been to many meetings where I am the only Black person around the table. That is not easy. So I have to do a little mental check, say, right, okay, Carol, it's okay. You've got something to say. You belong here. Right, move forward. That's something that I have to go through quite a lot. So what does that feel like for your customers or students who's coming to your organization? How do you actually welcome them and make them feel as if you want them to stay as well? And then the other thing is about realizing that not one size fits everyone. We're all different. We're all made up in different ways. And then also allies. So what do I mean by allies? I mean, in terms of make an effort to actually engage with your colleagues who might be different to you. Make an effort to actually kind of like read something. We just had a fantastic little history introduction, which is great. Do some more digging. Also make an effort to actually kind of like experience something different, try different food, as you mentioned, not just chips and tomato sauce, but just make an effort to do something different. And also, I think when we have this allyship, it's about believing someone who might come to you and say, look, I feel that this is just happening. It just doesn't feel right. Don't kind of like try and kind of like say, are you sure? Are you sure? Believe them. And then it's kind of like supporting them and it's kind of like finding a way how you can move forward together. So I think there's lots of things that we could do across the sector and in collaboration. But as I said, if you want more information about the Live in Black survey, please have a look. Please have a look at There's some really, really good tidbits in there.
So we've talked a little bit about our challenges. So Sean, my question for you is what kind of support systems or networks have helped you navigate some of the challenges you've faced as a chef of colour in particular, and how can these be expanded?
I think having a team around you that understands where you're coming from. I don't live in London. I live in the countryside, so it's a lot more challenging. Trying to find people to understand you, a good boss, a good team, and someone you can have an open conversation. Open conversation only started a couple of years ago through my experiences in the business. An example I have is I spoke to a colleague who works very close to me. I said something about the riots. It just happened recently, and he took it for granted that everything's okay. Where I live, I couldn't go out after 9 o'clock. And the reason I say that is don't take for granted the people that work next to you. You should know them. It doesn't mean they're going through something. They're going through something that's quite deep and quite difficult. They might put on a facade in front of you. So having a support system, having an allies, and open conversation, uncomfortable open conversation works. And the more you have it, the more your colleagues will appreciate you and understand you. And I think, it's just a learning. It's a learning step. It's teaching our colleagues, teaching our friends, not inside, but outside of work as well at the same time.
Great, thank you. And just to add to Sean's point there, I think we know the conversations about race are difficult, right? Ethnicity, culture. I think you made a great point in saying that it's easy to just ask and not always wonder and avoid kind of, it's that elephant in the room when you walk in and you're the only Black person and people just don't want to acknowledge it. So we're just going to say anything. But I have this conversation with my friends all the time. And I think a lot of the times it's better to ask the questions because it's all about intent. And I think if the intent is pure and it's good and you're asking because you are interested and you want to know something, they're going to know that. So instead of thinking, I'm not going to ask because I don't want to offend, because you're assuming we're going to be offended, but sometimes we want to be asked. So yeah, I would say just bite the bullet, ask the question, because if it's coming from a good place, they're going to know. Adding to that, just because it's my 2 pence worth, when you give that person freedom to educate and to advocate for themselves when you ask the question, a lot of the time, as Faisa said, we don't get that offended unless something is really offensive, or this is how something works, or this is how you give us the autonomy to do that. And I think that should kind of be at the forefront a lot of the time. So, Natasha, how can leaders improve their understanding of cultural differences and create an environment that respects and celebrates those differences? We've got a lot of leaders in the audience here today from across all of the brands. So I think it's time we tell them.
Well, I mean, it's really interesting what Sean just said in terms of not being afraid to talk and not being afraid to share. And I think, Carol, you suggested that as well. So recently, a few months ago, I was part of a reverse mentoring initiative that the company did. And for those of you who don't know what reverse mentoring is, it's where the mentor, is the person who guides and coaches someone who is in a higher position than them. So I reverse mentored a director within our company. And one of the things he wanted to know was around equality, diversity, and inclusion, and how he can better understand his workforce, who were probably from a minority sector. And I think that was really very powerful. It was very informative for me as well. And we had probably about 8 weeks where we worked together. So we met every week. I gave him a little bit of homework. So, who is Mia Mottley? She is the female Prime Minister of Barbados and a very powerful and a very influential person in the world, not just in the Caribbean region. And we had a lot of very interesting discussions around people of minority in his team, what they may be going through at times, how they may be thinking about certain things, how their actions may have been influenced by their upbringing and that sort of thing. And it wasn't just for us sitting down every week talking. So we also, I shared with him a book from a Caribbean author. It's called Wine of Astonishment. And the book was written in Trinidad, but it was written around the time where the American army there was American bases in Trinidad. And one of the sectors, the Baptist movement, they weren't allowed to practice or preach openly. So they had to hide. So they had to go to the forest, go to the bushes and hide to practice their faith. So we read that together, and every week we'll come together and he'd be like, okay, so this chapter, we'll talk about the struggle at the time. We'll talk about different things that were happening at that time in Trinidad. And we finished I call it a partnership, because it was really interesting because his daughter was 1 year older than my son. So we had a lot to talk about when it came to a Black child going to secondary school and a white child going to secondary school, or if his daughter was going out for a night out or my son was going out for a night out, what were the conversations? And they were two totally different conversations. So, my son, it would be, don't go into the shop with your hoodie on, take your cap off, take your hands out of your pocket. If the police come in, they're going to question you first before they go to anybody else. So things like that. But we finished on the subject of food and trying interesting food. We finished at a Caribbean restaurant. We had our last session there. And I introduced them to curry goat and roti. And I think that's important, to having a similar initiative, if we can do it together, that will be brilliant, just to get more of the senior leaders understanding.
Thank you. Before we do some more questions, I just want to throw it open to the audience even, in case you had any. based on some of the topics I saw. So, do you have any questions? If so, just remember to pop your mics on. Oh, cool, go for it. Pop your mic on. For me.
Sorry, what was the name of that book?
Oh, the book is called Wine of Astonishment by Earl Lovelace.
Cool. Get the thief.
You
And
can
then
take
second question. Cali Munchie. What does Cali Munchie mean?
Yeah, Cali was just myself and my siblings were just playing around with words and looking at cassava, kalewele, and Cali just came. So you just saw like Cali meaning good, and Munchie is just more of a fun way of eating. But yeah, we don't want to come over with like a Nigerian name and then wasn't going to say that it's a Nigerian business or a Ghanaian name. So we wanted something that kind of like flows out the tongue and is universal. Brilliant.
Just festivals, or is there somewhere we can find?
At the moment, just festivals, and we do a lot more corporate catering free fuel. That's where I'm just concentrating at the moment. But we do events here and there. So, for example, this Sunday we're going to be at a party here. During the year, a regular one we do is like wireless. Anyways, all the information on our website or it's.
It's a shameless pun.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that okay? Yeah. Can I just, if you don't mind, can I just have the show of hands of how many managers are in the house? Amazing. It's great.
And directors. Lots of
directors
important
as well.
people here.
Lots of important people. No, it's great. I just want to say that I really do think that this is really important. And I think that the fact that you're here today, listening to the experiences, I think is fantastic. But I just wanted to get a show of hands. But that's great. Thank you.
Question then for you, Eljay. What would you like to see more of in terms of allyship from your peers and colleagues? Any?
I think the answer to that would be I want to see more listening and support. It's one thing to lead and be the voice and be that person that everybody looks at for direction. But there's another thing to listen to the voices that are, I hate using this expression, but further down the tree than you, and also to support them in their journey. We're all busy people. We all have our own agendas, but I think nobody gets anywhere without having support. You must listen to the people that you work with, the people that are around you, the people that may one day be influencing you as well. And also never, ever forget, support them as best as you can. Make that time for those individuals who A, ask you for support, but B, you recognize might need support as well. And I think sometimes asking is more difficult than for us to recognize. So,
Ebenezer, do you believe that mentorship for minority chefs is sufficient in the culinary world? How can the industry improve support for aspiring chefs from underrepresented backgrounds?
Is mentorship sufficient enough currently? I think I'll give the flowers to the fact that we're in London. A lot of places I worked at and a lot of people I've seen, they have gone out of the way, or from my experience, gone out of the way to create those opportunities. Could it be better? Yeah. A lot of people might have a smiley face on, but they're carrying a lot of weight. And from my experience, a lot of Nigerians or Africans take on the weight of the family or having to support or the pressure of, oh, you're in this country, you must make the most of it and flow. And I think now, which is good now, that mental health is becoming more of a topic, especially in the black minorities and other cultures, because it's not an easy thing to carry upon industry we're in, which is hospitality. One of the things I was actually speaking to Eljay about is mentorship that looks more like showing how things work. And the way I can almost put that in is sometimes when I employ some staff is all well and good giving instructions and micromanaging. But then when you're showing up a case of, okay, cool, this event, we are doing 10 cucumbers because we need to do a salsa for 50 people. And then they mess up on one cucumber and it's like, okay, that's not feeding 50 people no more, that's doing 40 people. But more the financial education, the why you price, unique selling points, price points, just more a case where you're not just stuck in and focusing on your thing, but seeing how the whole business functions. And I say that because even when I was working at a lot of restaurants and so on, that's something that I was always interested in and excited me in terms of, I think it's more a case where like some of the frustration that I had was there's how many millions of people in the UK and you're just stuck in one place serving 100 people. There's so much opportunities out there and a case where you can expand and solve more problems, etc. But I think the education for minorities in the kitchen specifically could go beyond just a job role. And that's how you can see if people have more abilities than you kind of assume in the beginning. That's what's been able to, and it's surprising sometimes some people that you work with, what they can do is some of the most unlikely staff members that I've worked with that have shown themselves or proven themselves handle more in terms of even logistics to even handling the emails and so much more. But if I was meant to have trust issues and so on and just keep them in a box, I would never explore that. So I think to answer this question in short is just more a case where it would be nice for mentorship can kind of give people in the eyes a bit more, I would just say,
So basically upskilling. Yeah, and I think we try and do that. Certainly I know as, I work in front of house, but they're not just receptionists. We have apprenticeships. We try and do leadership programs. So yeah, you're right. They're not just working in the kitchen or cutting up cucumber.
Exactly. And I think you'd be surprised with how that is perceived with some young people as well that I work with. I'm not going to lie, there's some young men that I grew up in Southeast London, but some guys that I work with are black that look aggressive. They look like they'll slap you up.
We're changing that narrative.
Here to naturally narrative, but for example, when we were running the restaurant at Africa Center, there was one guy that I called him up the day before because we had a last minute booking. I was like, yo, I need you to help me in this. Can you do this extra? And the next day he was so grateful because he's never had someone entrusting responsibilities like that. So it's a case where the more things you give to certain people can encourage them.
That lends itself to it's got to be seen, and you've got to give people the opportunity to thrive as well. If they're never given that opportunity or given that chance, they can't prove anything different. Yeah, I think that lends itself really well to that.
Thank you. Carol, as a leader, what barriers do you think you personally faced in your career, and how can we dismantle those barriers for others, future generations?
Okay, it's a tricky question, and it's quite a personal question, so bear with me. So I face barriers all the way through my life as a professional, and it's quite challenging because you need to have inner strength. I relied heavily on my family as well, but I needed to have inner strength. So you kind of build up this resilience, and I think that the resilience and the experience that I had as a child growing up in Bristol. So I went to a primary school where there was only one other black family in the school, at the primary school. So as a result, we were really, really good friends. But we also had the wider network of the church. So that's where I got my kind of like support and resilience from that. So when I started to enter the world of work and knew I wanted to go into management, it wasn't because someone said to me, oh, Carol, yeah, I think you make a really good manager. I think you should go on this program. I had to do it all for myself. I had to dig within myself and say to myself, what do I want to do? And get on that path and also learn from that. So I would say to any person here, if you want to do something, don't wait for somebody else to come and say to you, you can do that. I think you need to look within yourself, do it yourself, find your network. That's the other thing I would say to my peers. If you are looking for support, look to your organization, ask for the support, but also look outside your organization. There's lots of networks, and also do kinds of work that might also be able to give you the added skill set that you want. So, for example, I joined the local school governing board because I want to have that board experience. I couldn't get that in my day-to-day work. And also I needed to have some more confidence about feeling comfortable at the table when I went to meetings with senior managers, and being the only black woman, I needed to have something else outside of work that was giving me the opportunity to practice that. The other thing I would say is do not let the glass ceiling stop us from going forward. If you want to do something, set your mind on it and do it. The other thing is a program, a pathway. I think as organizations, I think we have a duty to actually find a way to support the people that's coming into your organization. We have a duty to support students, and we have a duty to support colleagues. We have a duty to support people who we're actually paying to actually come and work for us. They're giving you their time, their mind, their body, their thinking, and they're receiving wages in return. But obviously they need more than that. They want to feel support, and they want to feel as if they've been nurtured and that they belong. So I think it's really important to send strong messages that you actually value them and that you want to support them, and that when they come to you with an idea or they want to do something different, sit down and have a chat and say, yeah, let's have a look at this. But don't kind of like place any ceilings or anything negative that they can't do it. Find something within what they're saying to encourage them. The other thing I would say is, as leaders, we have responsibilities. We have a responsibility to listen. It was interesting to see how many managers are here, but I didn't ask, on the other hand, who else is here. So I'm not sure what the other makeup is. I imagine it's lots of front of house, chef, support staff, admin staff. And it's nice to have us all here together, but try and find a way to learn from each other. And managers, talk to your staff who are not managers. And then also in terms of recruitment, if we're finding that we're getting the same people all the time, cast a wider net. Try a different recruitment agency. We don't have to do the same thing all the time. If you do the same thing, you get the same results. Cast a wider net. Try a different way of recruiting. One of my colleagues, she works in putting on events for students. So we wanted to get a range of students to apply for different roles within putting on events. So because it's an arts university, we went down the usual routine. Send in your CV, write your process specification, and we got the information back. And we just felt that we weren't getting the right type of person to be involved in events. So what we did, we said, send us a video of what you do, why you want to do it. We got it all cleared off by Human Resources, by the way, in case you're wondering. We asked them to send us a video and explain why they wanted the role. And from that, the caliber and the interest changed completely, because we were thinking about it's an arts university and we want to attract the creative people. So the reason why I say that, think about what it is you want to achieve in the end. You don't have to do exactly the same thing all the time. Try something different. And in terms of casting a wider net, by doing that, you'll get a different group of people. And at the same time, if you do get different people, you need to make sure you're there to support them. You need to be a good host so you can welcome them into your organization and make them feel as though they belong.
Okay, and Sean, if you could change one stereotype people have about chefs, what would it be?
No, I'm not going to come to your house to cook. My time is precious. I think it's more the fact that it's not the outside world. The chef environment is a very closed circle. So I think it's more chef to chef, changing the way they speak to each other and removing the word or using the word banters and unconscious bias. It's really important. You know, these small changes are that chefs need to change. We're not going to get people to grow. We're not going to, the industry for me has a long way to go from a chef perspective, because it's a closed environment where the outside people don't see what's happening inside. Just from applying for jobs, simple applying for jobs. If you saw my CV on there, you'd probably think it's something else. But when I turn up for an interview, the expressions on somebody's face is completely different. So we need to change that narrative of people's names. A name doesn't matter. It's the person we're looking for. The color doesn't matter. Race, nationality, none of that matters. So from a chef perspective, that needs to change.
Tasha, how important are employee resource groups in companies?
Okay, so I think they're very, very important. And I think they're actually a key resource to have. One of the things that, I feel is that we need to ensure that each team member within the company and within each sector has a voice. Not just a voice to be heard, but a voice to share as well and share experiences. And I think what we're doing as a company, having forums like this is vitally important, and that's helping a lot as well. So yes, I think it's vital to have resource groups within a company.
And a closing question now, this is open to you all.
Yeah.
As this year's theme is about reclaiming narratives, what is one narrative each of you would like to reclaim? If any of you can take it.
Okay, I'll go first. I think, well, I spoke to my sister about this last night, and she said, well, you have a double one because you're from the Caribbean and, you're Black. I think, yes, the Caribbean is great to go for holidays and have fun. We are fun people. But I think for me, reclaiming the narrative is about understanding that there are different regions within the world that we call third world that have quite a lot to offer in terms of leadership, in terms of innovation, in terms of, educational resources as well. And I think that's important as well to change that narrative. So yes, come and join Carnival and have some fun, but you can also send your kids to university. You can also come and learn about natural gas and oil and all these things that help the world grow and make money as well.
Thank you, Natasha.
African food is not spicy. I think that's something that
It's just flavors.
I think there's an assumption or narrative that are good to change that. Some people, as soon as they see ever say African or Caribbean food, it's just like, yeah, it's spicy, but it's not really. Yeah, even to speak about, to get back, regarding the question I asked me before, I think one thing about mentorship as well, I think I was just more answering specific to chefs, managers to chefs, but also business to business. I think working with Fuel quite a lot, it's enabled my business to grow quite a lot, and it's just more exposure and opportunities. I think it's just stretching it out to other businesses as well. I think I saw the owner of Benig, and I was having the conversations with him, but those interactions I think are quite key, because a lot of Black-owned businesses kind of stay stagnant, where people aren't recruiting the support needed to help a business actually grow. But when more opportunities come and more resources, and you find out how to expand the business, hire the right people, and so on, I think those are key to helping everybody make more money. But yeah.
Thank you. Do you have a narrative you'd like to change, Faisa, or reclaim? Any questions before we close?
Can I just say that for me, and I feel quite strongly about it, is that we're just people, and, we're just living human beings. We've got blood inside of us. We're not going to hurt anybody. We just kind of like have the same aspirations as everybody else. We want a good life. We want food, shelter, clothing. We love our families. And that's the narrative I want you to take back with you. We're not all the same. When I say we're not all, and that's kind of like in British, we're just, we all got, look at us here, and we've all come from different backgrounds. We have different views on life. See us as individual people, okay? Do not kind of like make any stereotypes. Check your biases that you might have. But for me, changing the narrative is really important in terms of seeing us as people. We have dreams, hopes, aspirations. We want to live a good life. I think.
Just wanted to add one thing. It goes back to what you said, Faisa, right at the beginning. That statement that our mothers and our fathers make to us quite often, normally it's from the grandmother, actually. You got to work harder. You always got to work harder. They never say work smarter. So I think that is the thing that we need to change that narrative to. Don't just work harder, because if you're working smart, by default, you're working hard.
And I think that brings our wonderful panel to a close. So I'd like to thank you so much for your participation, your time, taking the time to be here and answer some really great questions. And thank you for those who sent those questions in as well. There was a lot of thought that went into those, compiled by our committee and from, the company.